Today on a special crossover event, it might be a silly question, but we have two silly guys answering that question. Who has the bigger bounce back season in 2024, the Colorado Rockies or the San Diego Padres?
You are Locked On Rockies, your daily Colorado Rockies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Rock on, Rockies fans and Padres fans. Welcome into the Locked On Podcast Network crossover extravaganza. Look at Javi doing his best Schefter impersonation, right? Firing off last second texts and tweets.
Yeah, man.
Insider.
I'm inside on the Padres. It's definitely not because someone asked me about a fantasy football trade. Well, it can't possibly be that. It's just insider Padres stuff, man.
Right in the prime of trade season. No, but folks, it's not a fantasy football podcast, as much fun as that might be. This is the Locked On Rockies and Locked On Padres podcast, your home for daily Rockies and Padres talk right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where you can find your team every day. This episode is the 19th of October in the year 2023, and today's episode is brought to you by Sleeper. Swing for the fences on Sleeper picks, and you could win up to 100 times your money. Download the Sleeper app and use promo code LOCKEDON, and you'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Currently operational in 30 states. Check out Sleeper today, and we are checking out we're looking into the crystal ball of the offseason here. And like I said in the open there, it might be a silly question, but I think there's more merit to it than people might think. Who has the bigger bounce back season in 2024, the Rockies or the Padres? I also want to highlight some things that people missed because, Javi, you pointed out something today as we're recording. The Gold Glove announcements were announced today, and you pointed out how good Tatis was in the outfield.
Yeah.
Just out of nowhere, really. I mean, to be Gold Glove finalist after the transition and every other thing under the sun that he dealt with. I kind of wanted to talk about things that people might have missed about these two teams. And then I don't want to get ahead of myself because I know they're watching, but are the Dodgers dead? We'll talk about that coming up as well. Let's start with the things people might have missed, and we can get to the bounce back stuff in a little bit. But I kind of wanted to highlight that because I think that was a really good point. And I think the Rockies have some similar storylines. Most people are like, "Wow, the Rockies were terrible this year," but there's some things in there people might have missed. What kind of else, like the Tatis thing? And tell me a little bit about Tatis in the outfield. What worked for him out there, and what other things were pleasant surprises or maybe not so pleasant surprises about the Padres this year?
So I'll start with Tatis and specifically because that was a really surprising thing. And I think that what happens with defense, my theory has just been that there's like a stereotype for what a good outfielder looks like and what a bad one looks like. So a lot of people, I think they assume that the lumbering big guys can't be good defensive players when Joey Gallo, who has actually had really good defensive seasons before, not as much of late, but he was an excellent Gold Glover caliber defender. And then someone like Ronald Acuna Jr., his offense is amazing, so it almost doesn't matter, but he has been disappointingly bad in the outfield. If you look at outs above average, I think he's in the second percentile among all players. So he hasn't been good there, even though he has all the tools, the speed, the lateral movement, all that stuff that we see, just the athleticism. So Tatis's defense wasn't some guarantee to me. You know what I mean? And
right.
I thought yeah, he's fast and he had the air Tatis grab that people did a bunch of shirts for and whatnot. But like I said, Aaron Judge, people wouldn't think he's a great defender. He's amazing. And Tatis just completely immediately was great in the outfield. And I think that it was a little bit of a surprise. He's always had the talent. He's always had the speed. He has incredible arm strength. But he showed it off a lot this year. And I think that one of the reasons he led all of Major League Baseball in defensive runs saved, especially, was because he threw out so many guys. And I don't know if he'll necessarily lead again, because I think defensive runs saved for outfielders might be an area that might be inflated a little bit when you throw out people. And when people know officially now, Tatis can throw you out, you might get less opportunities. You know what I mean? There might be less people who test that arm now. It's like when they show you some broadcasts, the green light, yellow or red light, depending on who is in the outfield. Tatis is clearly going to be a red light now. And he also tracked the ball really well. He made some good catches. Like he was just so loose out there. And it kind of accompanies his play style. Like he's a loose guy. So why have him in the infield? Have him in the outfield. And well, I would push back against the idea that Tatis was a horrendous shortstop. I think that gets overblown a little bit. He struggled for sure, but he had all the tools. Yeah, easily one of the best developments in general for a really bad Padres team was Tatis's defense for sure, man. And I am very grateful. Very grateful, and he's probably going to run away with the Gold Glove for right field, as he was just nominated along with, I think, Lane Thomas and then Mookie Betts.
Yeah, I mean, it's and I think it's big for him this year because after everything that happened and personality, whatever you want to say about personalities or anything like, but just after the offseason and the off the field stuff, kind of showed that he was, hey, I'm in with the Padres. Like they want me to change positions, I'm going to go out and do it, and not only do it but succeed. So you have to feel confident in that. And you kind of has to lead into other things. I mean, Manny Machado played a pretty good third base this year as well. I mean, were you surprised that he wasn't a finalist over there at third base? I mean, a pretty loaded class. And on top of it, the Arenado streak over as well. And how much do you really put into the award? I mean, me as a Rockies fan, I did a whole episode where it's like, put all the context you need in there, sure, but it still feels pretty good to say these players were some of the best in the biz.
Yeah, and it's so funny that Arenado is in there that a lot of Padres fans are probably like, oh, duh, of course the 1 year Arenado isn't there, and there I still can't get any love there. In fairness, this wasn't like Machado's greatest defensive season. Did he get snubbed? Maybe it was like Ryan McMahon, Ke'Bryan Hayes, and
Atlanta's third baseman.
Austin Riley. Okay. I mean, if you were just to look at defensive runs saved and outs above average, which I've already cited, Manny had less defensive runs saved than Austin Riley, 9-4, but then outs above average, he was 11-0. So you could argue that maybe Manny should have been on there. After Manny's season, I'm not exactly in the greatest spirits to like be valiantly defending him because he was so disappointing. But I think you could make that case. But it's wild, right? Like there's third base is just stacked with really good defenders these days. I mean, even someone like Josh Jung of the Texas Rangers, like his first year, I know that's American League, but he's been really good. You always have Alex Bregman, and Ke'Bryan Hayes is just a cheat code over at third base. He really feels like the next Andrelton Simmons in a lot of ways, which is both a compliment and a negative, I think. But yeah, I was a little bit surprised by that. But again, I mean, Manny was just a little bit, I think him not having the best of seasons isn't great. And it's not like Austin Riley is totally undeserving. Like, say, in fairness, because I know Padres fans will yell, oh, you should be pumping up your team. Well, Juan Soto got a nomination last year in right field, and I think that guy had like -20 defensive runs saved, or I'm exaggerating, and like he just looks like a tree. He tracks the ball horribly. You always feel like he's like having trouble catching it almost. It's really weird watching him play. So it's not like we haven't been on haven't been favored in this before. So again, I just think it's a stacked position. And Ryan McMahon is like a really, I think, and I imagine you're going to talk about him for things that people maybe overlooked, I think, because Ryan McMahon had, from what I saw, like a pretty decent season.
Yeah, it's another thing where the Rockies continue to have dominance defensively at third baseman. The Rockies have now, the Arenado streak might be over, but the Rockies streak is not. I mean, this is another a finalist there at that position, and Ryan McMahon has shown that he is an elite defender. And I think when you look at last year, arguably had a season that was better than Arenado's, and I think he's going to lose out on name factor. I think, the Bryant Hayes and Austin Riley will be a little more flashy, but people miss the fact this Rockies team has 3 Gold Glovers and really should have had 4, with Nolan Jones just missing out because he didn't have enough innings played to qualify. But Nolan Jones, just like you were talking about Tatis, no one's running on Nolan Jones. If you keep running on Nolan Jones next year, I'll be more than happy, because that guy will keep cutting you down. So the Rockies had 3 Gold Glove finalists and another surprising outfielder there, setting up to the fact that there is an exciting core for this Rockies team. It's just a question of what are the steps forward this team is going to take with these young guys and these young players, because they strike out a lot. It's a team that wasn't a great offense, and but it's really great to see these things like defense get reflected upon. And offense was up a little bit for the Rockies. It's just the starting pitching disaster mess of no depth, and all of that is going to be an issue that the Rockies are going to have to deal with. Is there anything else that people might have missed about this Padres team amongst the disappointment? Because unfortunately, they get to be right right up there with the Mets as the team that always is a scapegoat for they spend money, but they didn't make it to the playoffs.
Yeah, I always love those conversations because meanwhile the Brewers and Orioles and Rays just got completely like spanked
Obliterated
in the postseason, and they haven't won a World Series since like before Beverly Hills Cop came out. So like again, I just think it's so funny that people do that. You do need the stuff that the Brewers and all those teams do well, but I also don't like kicking the can down the road and feigning competitiveness because my owner definitely doesn't have motivation to not spend. It's like, oh yeah, the farm is the right way. It's like, yeah, of course you're gonna say that, dude. Like you want to get another Lamborghini or something.
Right.
I think that the last things for Padres, it's hard for me to say it because I'm so in it. I think we're both so in it that it's like might not be surprising to us, but probably their pitching overall, their rotation. I think that was like the biggest. I remember that being the biggest conversation point about this Padres team back in the preseason when they were favored. So like Michael Wacha, Seth Lugo, those guys, not the best bullpen in the world, especially in high leverage situations, but someone like Tom Cosgrove was really, really effective for them this year. And then maybe the last thing that I might have to mention is Gary Sanchez, just like unbelievable bats back for my guy. St. Gary just came in and like almost in like half the games matched Xander Bogaerts' RBI total. And don't get me wrong, he has some, kinks to work out. He's not the best player in the world or anything. He's not what he is at the beginning or was at the beginning of his Yankees career. But like hit for power wasn't that bad defensively. He had a good like final wins above replacement total. Like he was pretty solid. And then Luis Campusano, like they low key had like one of the better catching duos in the league with Campusano as the young prospect and Gary as like a bounce back dude. So that's why I'd say Lugo, Wacha, Cosgrove, Campusano, and then Gary, probably the things that people might have missed.
And you'll take good catching performances. I mean, especially offensively in any way you can. And a good year for catchers on both of these teams. Elias Diaz, of course, the Rockies All-Star, and that's going to be your bar trivia. Who was the 2023 MLB All-Star Game MVP? Elias Diaz. Don't forget that one.
That was amazing.
Let's talk about bounce back seasons. Let's talk about potential upsides. I'll be real here. I'll come clean. The Padres are in a much better spot to make the playoffs next year than the Rockies, but in a vacuum and in our wonderful world of sports conversation, we're going to dive into whose bounce back will be bigger in 2024 between these two teams. Coming up here on today's episode of Locked On Rockies and Locked On Padres. But before we do that, for you folks out there that are dominant at the daily fantasy game, you don't want to miss out on Sleeper. The MLB playoffs are here and in full swing, which means the clock is ticking on your chance to 100 times your cash on daily fantasy baseball. Baseball has never been more exciting than it is now with studs all across the infield, the outfield, all around, from the Braves. Not the Braves. I forget. I almost got them auto locked in there, but you could go for Corbin Carroll. You could go for those red hot Phillies home run hitters. All you got to do is pick more or less on stats like home runs, hits, strikeouts, and more for up to 100 times payout on Sleeper. Get your picks right, and you could win big. Use promo code Locked On, and you'll get up to $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions do apply. See Sleeper's terms and use for details. And remember, promo code Locked On at sleeper.com, and you'll get a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions do apply. All right, folks, this is the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm Paul Holden, host of Locked On Rockies. Javi Reyes, the host of Locked On Padres, the most fun Padres podcast out there. Willie, how many times did you have to wear a Jester's hat this season?
Say that one more time. My apologies.
No, it's totally all right. That fantasy football trade locked in. The discussions are so intense. I'm curious who it is because that's a big name trade. I was curious how many times you had to wear your iconic Jester hat this season.
Oh, so that's a great story because for most of the year I wore it, and then I think people started getting mad, so then I retired it for a little bit. They went on a tiny decent 1 week stretch, and then I vowed that I would only put it back on. I think it was after they were officially eliminated. That's what I did, and I haven't worn it since. I still have it right here. Don't get me wrong, I still have the Jester hat. It's still hanging out, but I don't know. It was just it felt like Jester wasn't even enough.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Like, it felt like it wasn't enough because I did it in 2021 when they had their famous collapse. And this year it was just like incredible how like I couldn't even have fun with the team. You know, like I know we
Oh,
talked
I
about
can
this.
feel that.
Yeah. Like, don't get me wrong, I know we just talked about some of the things that went well, but it was really incredible how allergic they were to winning. And I'm not just talking about some of the games against the Rockies, which is a team that they've struggled against these past few seasons, especially. So like 2021 through 23. But it's just like no like juice. There, you never felt, and the amount of times I would see like Petco sold out and like cheering, and then it's like first and second, nobody out. Here come your stars up to the plate, Xander, Tatis, Soto, Manny, and they would get like a double play and a pop up. Like every time, it just sucks the life out of you, man. Like seriously. So I think I even want to give them the satisfaction of the Joker jester persona that I'd cultivated over these past few years, and I just was really in a bad spot. And I'm hoping they bounce back. And I know we're about to talk about that, but my lord, man, they put us through the ringer, and it sounds weird, but especially for a team that had a plus 90 run differential and 82 and 80, but oh my gosh, it's just like they were begging for teams to overtake them in the playoff race, like begging, absolutely begging.
Well, I think that's a good point. I mean, for Rockies fans, of course, this year worse than any other year. It is never, you have never watched more losses than it, but at least we had the context of the second half of the season. I'm watching the young guys. You're encouraged by the trade deadline move. If I was watching CJ Cron bat for the Rockies in the middle of September and Randall Grichuk in the lineup, I would be in a much different mindset about where the Rockies are at. And that's why 2024 for the Rockies is going to be good, just because we can have these guys and they're the starters there. We know what we got, and we'll see what steps forward they're going. I don't think they're winning. I think they might avoid the 100 losses, but it's still going to be really tough. But when you are a Padres fan and when you've seen the moves that they've made now for years at this point, it's, since they've really believed in buying in and going after people and making big trades, 82, that's not enough. That's not enough to win 82 games. I mean, it's not enough to be missing out on the playoffs at this. So in a way, I think it's more frustrating to be a Padres fan because, well, I guess there's two ways to look at it. I believe that your team will have bigger, more quick fixes and better adjustments to just their overall a team, whereas the Rockies still kind of feel like they're on a wing and a prayer, and they're hoping for this.
I think that's and I think that's the age-old question that I've been wondering. I go back and forth. I vacillate between the two, where it's almost like, just in honor of my dumb fantasy football text, like, is it better to be a fan of a team that is like consistently there, like say Dallas, say the Chargers, where they have the talent and they break your heart in different ways every single year, or a team that is perpetually awful, but you don't have your expectations high, so everything is just like a bonus, right? Like, I don't know which is worse. I lean towards it's still worse to be the bad team consistently, because at least you get to watch some good talent. At least you get to watch Tatis do the orchestra gesture at the, jeering Yankees fans and whatnot. Like, at least you have stuff to look at. And hey, who knows? It's almost like, would you rather have hope or not? Is it the hope that kills you, as Ted Lasso told us, or is it that, it's just kind of fun and you find quirky new ways to be a fan? Because I will tell you one thing about the Rockies that always surprised me is, despite having, stuff with Jeff Bridrich and the infamous Arenado trade and all this stuff, y'all are still always up there in attendance. Clearly there's a vibe that is nice with the Rockies fandom that I am a little bit jealous of, that everybody just seems to have a good time at the very minimum. And I think that's a healthy attitude about life. So again, I go back and forth between the two. But I guess to conclude, it's because I'm the Padres guy, I said we're in a better position. And I think that when it comes to bounce back, I think in context, maybe the Rockies have a shot. Obviously not in terms of wins and playoff luck, but in terms of what if they're this frisky 78, 77 win team where Ezekiel Tovar figures things out or whatever, and maybe Chris Bryant drinks the fountain of youth and gets some power back. Then it would be like, oh, that was cool. Like, we got stuff. Whereas the Padres, it's almost like more binary, right? Where the Rockies, you can hope for players to get better. The Padres, you're almost like, I'm hoping for them to win. You know what I mean? So there's a little bit less wiggle room, I think.
Yeah, and that's the right way to look at it in terms of that. But it is frustrating because the Rockies have just done so much losing, where it's like that apathy has grown so much. Where like that's one of the toughest part. The Rockies are up in attendance, but it certainly ain't Rockies fans packing that stadium. I mean, everyone loves to go to Colorado, and Coors is a great place to watch, but it's one of those things where people get really fired up about is the attendance and stuff. And it's like, as much as we care and as much as we are very passionate about it, I'm never going to fault people if they want to go to the ballpark and enjoy a day watching some ball and enjoying the Rockies play whoever it might be. But it's at least, I think, more excitement going into next year now after the moves, because going into 2023 it's CJ Cron, it's Randall Grichuk, it's these aging veterans, it's the future is coming, but were they going to arrive? And they really impressed. I mean, the Rockies have some really, really impressive performances and have some things to look forward to, but I don't necessarily think the bounce. I think the Padres are in the best position that they have been in to make that big step forward in this point, because, and we'll focus more on the big picture NL West, because as much as as great as the Diamondbacks have been this season, they are the young upstart team that's caught fire at the right time and now running into a brick wall. The NL West is going to be much more of a mix-up next year, I think, than we're used to, and the Rockies hopefully can avoid the basement, but I don't really see how that's possible. We'll see. They could be like the Reds this year, where young and exciting and doing these things. They just don't have the same level of exciting prospects where you're going to have someone that's going to hit inside the park home runs and steal home for you. But they have really decent players to also be excited about and encouraged by. So, what's the first move that the Padres need to make this offseason?
Oh my God, that's the real heavy hitting question, right? I think they need to figure out what they're doing with Juan Soto first. Whether that's a trade or it's an extension. I think the idea of heading into the season not knowing is really weird. And I know that if they want to trade him, that it would be maybe they just want to like let it ride. We have one more year with this guy. Like, let's just see. He's so good that like it might be worth it. But it is still remains very weird for you to give up all that talent, all the farm system stuff, get rid of a lot of flexibility on your roster, and extend nearly every player on the team except him, which is what they did last offseason with Darvish, Cronenworth, Machado, Suarez, and then the contract to Bogarts. So it's just very weird. It feels a little bit short-sighted. So I think that's what they have to figure out. They have to figure out what's going on with the front office with AJ Preller and Bob Melvin's fractured relationship by all accounts. Like, figure that out, and then you can go. I don't think this has to be an offseason where they make more splashes. Granted, I've said that for, I think, the last 3 years, and every time I say that, they make another big splash. So maybe I don't know anything, but I think they need to figure out Soto. I think they need to decide what direction they're going into. And if they do that, then everything else opens up. It's like the first domino to fall. If you extend him, then it's like, all right, cool. This is it, folks. Like, we're not going to be able to do too much more spending wise. Even if they were to backload the contract, they still probably won't have too much wiggle room because of the reports that they're going to cut down a little bit on spending to reportedly 200 million. That's fine, by the way. It's totally fine. But I don't know. What if it's lower than that and we don't realize it? So we'll see, because the winning hasn't exactly been there with the spending. So I think Soto would be the number one, though, for sure.
Yeah, big question mark there. I mean, just big name like that and contracts, and I mean, get a little bit of that investment back potentially.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows? But let's zoom out a little bit and let's predict and talk NL West and see how legit we think some of these teams are in segment number 3. But before we do that, we got to tell you about the Jase case and Jase Medical. The Jase case has you covered in situations where you might not know where you're going to have access to certain antibiotics. It has you covered with all sorts of great antibiotics for you, your family, whoever might need them. And we got a deal as well on this product for you. Things like natural disasters, pandemics, all sorts of stuff can get and cut you off from the treatment you need. Jase Medical is your solution. Just fill out their online form, and one of Jase Medical's board-certified physicians will review it to determine whether medications are safe and appropriate. Then Jase will send your prescriptions to one of their partner pharmacies, where your order will be filled and mailed directly to your home. You can also send your physician a message for answers to your treatment-related questions at any time. Everyone should be empowered to care for themselves and loved ones during the unexpected. That's why Jase Medical offers the Jase case. Save more than $360 by getting life-saving antibiotics with Jase Medical, plus an additional $20 off by using the code LOCKEDON at checkout on jasemedical.com. That's JASE medical.com. This is the Locked On Podcast Network, Locked On Rockies, Locked On Padres, inside Padres fantasy war room here as we continue to monitor trade watch here for Javi. Javi, are you close to your deal here? Have you been able to get the deal done
Not
during the episode?
It might happen. It might happen, but I'm more focused on this because I was actually thinking about this. I had to check what the Dodgers standings and numbers were because
let's declare it. Let's be the homers, Javi.
Let's do it.
Let's declare the Dodgers dead, even though I'm still terrified of them, even though they're still probably going to win the division, even though I still believe that they will restock that pitching rotation.
Mm-hmm.
Are you ready to declare the Dodgers dead? And you know what? They might be. I know I'm yelling from the basement down here, but I'm sorry. They are a disappointing playoff team.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Dude, don't feel any shame. And one thing I've noticed, I haven't got any Dodger and I'm not saying this as like to make a generalizing statement on Dodgers fans as a whole, but like I do get like comments on my YouTube channel frequently enough that have nothing to do with the Dodgers, where it'll be like Padres disappoint another series, and it'll be like, go hey, the SD stands for what I forgot what it was, some really horrible like dumb comment. Like it wasn't even like mean, it was just so cheesy. It was like, and the SD stands for standing down. I forgot what it was, but like just a lot of comments, and none of them have commented lately. So I find that very amusing. They're Peyton Manning. It's as simple as that. They're Peyton Manning. Dare I say James Harden. They just choke in the playoffs every year. And this is why the Dodger fans are not even remotely close to worst fan bases in sports. Not even close. I think the Atlanta Braves took care of that notion last week. And there's much worse than even them. But they really like acting, and I've said this a lot, like the 90s Yankees, winning 4 out of 5 years. It's like, y'all got the regular season stuff. You have an unprecedented ability to turn players that no one's ever heard of, James Outman being one, and players who everyone gave up on, Jason Hayward being this year's example, into quality players. But then you get into the postseason and the Arizona Diamondbacks, who I'm pretty sure the last time
it's the format.
It's the format, man. It's the format. Then why were y'all losing before this?
Yeah,
Man, Clayton Kershaw coming out here looking like me if I was pitching in the first inning. Like it's just. That's all they do. This is why I am literally, am I scared of them in the regular season? Abso-friggin-lutely. I do not want to face them ever in the regular season. Oh, they could sign Ahmed Rosario and they'll make this guy good, right? They could sign Trent Grisham and he will turn into Christian Yelich in 1 year with them, right? Like they deserve a lot of credit. And I don't think this has anything to do with their team building. It's just that as a team, for whatever reason, I personally find it funny that Dave Roberts is just going to once again be their manager. I'm not saying it's his fault. I would just think that considering your only time you didn't choke it up was in a truncated season, and I know that the Dodgers fans love to flex that they beat the Padres that year when our top 2 starters were both out. Again, congratulations. So that would be my take on the Dodgers. It's just like, you're just not going to do anything again. You're just going to keep Roberts. You would think that with all the choking that they'd be like, Dave, we love you. The players love you, but we're just going to try something new now. Like we're just going to try and bring in a young guy, whatever, and just see what happens. Maybe it blows up in our face, but at least let's like try instead of whatever Einstein said about the theory about going insanity, right? Like it's just hilarious. They do this every year. They got swept, Paul.
Yeah, swept. So leading into that, how legit are the Diamondbacks?
How legit are the Diamondbacks? I think legit. I don't know if they can carry it year to year. I'd be very curious.
No, they're a team like they're like the Rockies, where they'll have a good window, but XYZ is going to happen and it'll be tough, but they're a good team. But I'm not going to sit here and ready to say that they're going to run. I don't think they run the NL West next year.
No. I just think that the Dodgers will find new players, and frankly, I'm wondering if the Dodgers will be more incentivized to spend on a big pitcher. I have nightmares about the possibility of them getting Blake Snell, and me having to watch him pitch against us would be probably one of the most just frankly hurtful things that could have possibly happened to me hosting this show. It will hurt so much. I would literally rather them sign Mac like prime Garrett Cole, just because at least it's like I have no attachment to him. You know what I mean? Like that I would much prefer that. But yeah, I mean, can they still win it next year? Yeah. But in terms of the NL West gambit, Giants are always a sleeper because they literally tried to go for Correa and Ohtani last year. I'm not Ohtani, Correa and Judge last year. So they clearly are showing that they're ready to spend. They just got rid of their manager. Like they're ready to make moves. They just weren't able to do it last year. So I definitely keep an eye on them. I think the D-backs could at least be regular season good again. So maybe they won't run it. And if you're just hopeful that the Padres won't go 6-38 or whatever in one-run games, that they should bounce back too. And maybe the Rockies could be more frisky. So yeah, this is a funeral for the Dodgers, at least for this year. I am dancing on their grave. I am the meme of the guy standing at the funeral, saying, "I just showed up to make sure they're dead." That is 100% me, and you probably too. 100%. It's just like it's the word. Hey, Snydog, where you at? Hey, Jeff Snyder.
Unfortunately, I'm gonna have to show my face in the preseason like group pod.
Right.
Every time I've talked smack about the Rockies, it's just gotten worse and worse, and then we just have to deal with, oh, look, we just got all these people taking and then we're gonna turn this guy around and look at this farm system we have. Look at this depth, and I'm gonna be wondering who the Rockies' starting two pitchers are because we still have them recovering from Tommy John. So Chase Anderson and Ty Block again. Here we come. I think the West will be is still open to a change at the top, but the Dodgers have to be not. It's a very cliche thing, but until it happens, I'm not counting against it. Like until they lose and until it's the end of the season and they're fighting through a wild card, which I think would be terrible for them. I'll celebrate the true death of the Dodgers, but for now, another sweep in the postseason. Same amount of wins in the postseason as the Padres and the Rockies this year, the LA Dodgers. So we'll take that.
Amazing. Mookie Betts and what is it? Mookie
Betts, 2
MVP
candidates.
Like 3 of their last 39 in the postseason.
Yeah.
It's like, and Betts was amazing their first year in the playoffs. He's part of the reason they won. It's like, did he stay there too long so the Dodgers choke stink has even attached to him? I just, it's unbelievable how they keep doing this, man. Again, regular season, no team I fear more. Playoffs, I'm not kidding. You could put the Royals up against them, and I think that they would have a shot. For whatever reason, they dog it, and it is exactly why you cannot place them in the same breath as many other teams. And frankly, yeah, it is an indictment that the one time they didn't choke was in the shortened season. It's hard to stave off the allegations, but that's the only time that you were able to do it. So,
yeah, I mean, clearly, I mean, it's say what you will about the Astros. They are at least making it consistent, and they're at least going back and doing that. They might be the villain, and we know the story, but 7 straight ALCSs ain't any, and multiple World Series appearances and World Series titles in that time. As I'll put the verbal star next to it, as we all do. But Javi, wonderful as always. Let's wrap things up. Where are the people going to get all their Padres knowledge throughout the offseason? Where do they go to stay up to date with you and all things going on in the world of Javi?
I'm so glad you asked. At Javipedio on Twitter for my personal account, and then at LO_Padres. Go check out the Locked On Padres account because I have a pinned tweet for mailbag questions. So I will solicit those from anyone. Paul, you could ask a question too. I don't care. Go ahead.
Well, I just asked a bunch of questions.
Yeah, I know. But if you want to throw another one, why not? Leave them in the comments, whatever. And they could also be on other things. It could be on other teams, general baseball, and just, I don't know. You could ask me about
your thoughts on Spider-Man.
Spider-Man 2. I mean, it comes out, man.
Right
One
here.
day, baby.
Right around the corner.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's right here. So as we're both PlayStation nerds, you guys can ask me about that. Whatever. I don't really care. Just been a long time since I did a mailbag. And then, of course, Locked On Padres on YouTube as well. And yeah, man, I hope everybody stays safe. And it stays faithful, of course. But hopefully things go well, man. I think that this was really bad season for both of us, but at least we have hope, I guess.
Hope. It's the deadliest drug, like you mentioned there. It could be the worst thing. But for any Padres fans out there that are curious, I'm Paul Holden. You can find me at Paul Holden 33. You can find us on the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel and LO Rockies on Twitter, X, whatever it's called these days. Folks, until next time, thank you for making us your first listen of the day, and we will see you on the Locked On Podcast Network.